Hello, I hope this video finds you well. Today has been the worst Monday of all time. I have basically failed to get my anti-anxiety medication, so I'm kind of jittery, and I just thought, how can I channel that negative energy in a way that might potentially get me views and affirmation that I so desperately need. So I decided to make a video where I trash popular books that people love, but I not even hate it, I don't get it. I'm just gonna launch straight into it. The first book that I'm going to talk about is a trilogy. It's called the Ancestor Trilogy, and it's a fantasy trilogy by the author Mark Lawrence. It is about a kind of slightly alternative world to our own, wherein all these girls are at a convent and they're being trained to become like assassin nuns. I read the first and second one because people kept saying that they were really good fantasy books, and I hated them so much. I thought they were boring. I thought that the characters were all very distant. I was uncomfortable with the idea that a man was writing about like lesbian warrior ninja nuns. I just thought, what the fuck is this? And I think I was on the audiobook for the second book, which, by the way, I hated the audiobook as well. And I just thought, I'm done with listening to this. This is so fucking boring. I really don't have that much more to say about it. I had some pictures up on my Instagram from when I was reading it, and Mark Lawrence like commented on them being like, oh, good to see you're enjoying them. I was like, I'm not, guy. These are awful. Please don't write again. But anyway, so that's just me. I hated those books. I would not rate them. And that's all I have to say, really. The next book that I want to talk about is The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, whatever, by Stuart Turton. So it was a much raved about book on the various book social medias, BookTube, Bookstagram. And basically the plot is there is a man who wakes up in different bodies every day, and he has to figure out why he's waking up in different bodies, and also he has to prevent the murder of a woman called Evelyn Hardcastle. It's basically a twist on the classic Agatha Christie closed door mystery type situation. And while I was reading it, I was like, okay, the writing is so-so and the characters are so-so. It's extremely fat-phobic. In one of the bodies is one of a fat man. It just, the whole thing is like, oh my god, I can't move and I'm so greasy and sweaty and fat and disgusting, but I'm really sharp. People wouldn't know that because I'm fat. I was like, okay, choice. And then the ending came and I was like, spoiler alert, the ending is essentially like, it was all a dream and it was like a computer created reality. It wasn't real, and I hate when that happens because like all of the stakes don't really matter. It was so lazy, and people kept telling me it was clever, and I just thought, okay, so if I write a book one day wherein like the plot is absurd and very contrived, but instead of figuring out how it'll make sense in the end, I'll just be like, guys, it was all a dream, I could make millions because I would just rip off Agatha Christie, you know, put in some like contrived romance plot, and then make it all a dream in the end, and that's it. That's apparently how you can write a really clever twist on a classic murder mystery. So yeah, don't read that book, and don't trust anyone who tells you that it's good, because it isn't. Spoiler over. The next book that I wanted to talk about is a graphic novel. It's, I think, 2 graphic novels, and it's called The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen by Alan Moore. Basically, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen takes famous characters from fiction, so you'll have Jules Verne, and you have The Invisible Man by H.G. Wells, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, that kind of stuff, and they all come together, and I think they're trying to figure out who's going around committing some pretty heinous crimes. It's been a really long time since I read it, but somebody, I think, so long ago. Okay, I don't actually remember the plot. The bits that I remember is that, spoiler, the Invisible Man is using his invisibility to go to a boarding school for women and rape them in the middle of the night. So that's what he does. Dr. Jekyll, who basically turns into a hybrid of the Hulk and Mr. Hyde, decides to rape him to death at some point. And it's kind of seen as like a romantic gesture by Mina from Dracula, who's also part of this league. And I just thought, Alan Moore, fuck off. Fuck off. Fuck off. Fuck off. Fuck off. Don't read those. They're trash. I don't think, is anybody reading that? Who's reading Alan Moore these days? I don't know. I mean, Watchmen is okay. There's rape in that one as well, but yeah. I think probably rape is a plotline in every single Alan Moore graphic novel. Is rape a plotline in V for Vendetta?
I don't think so.
Okay, maybe not in V for Vendetta, so read that one. Definitely in From Hell, which is about Jack the Ripper. So those are the ones that I don't own because I got rid of them as fast as I could. The ones that I still have in my possession for some strange reason, I'm gonna go ahead and talk about those. So the first one I'm gonna talk about is The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. So this is a classic from the good old Victorian age, and it was published in 1860. At the time that it was published, it was seen as, I guess, a little bit risque. From what my understanding is, Wilkie Collins was never really rated as an author, and for some reason, because his books have existed for decades now, 140, 60, whatever years, we've decided that there must be something in them for the longevity. But no, this book is trash, and I would not have read it had I not had an audiobook that was quite good. The audiobook narrator, I rated that. Basically, the plot for this book is a young man, a young artist, is invited to this country house to teach the nieces of this rich man how to paint. So we have two nieces. One is basically coded as lesbian. She's a lesbian. She's described as like very masculine and very capable, and her sister, on the other hand, is just useless throughout the entire plot. She is the damsel in distress. All the misfortunes kind of happen to her, and they just launch the plot and keep it going. I appreciate this novel because it talked about things that were happening in the Victorian era. So this is a little bit spoiler for the book, but basically what happens at some point in this novel is that the useless female character ends up in a insane asylum, for lack of a better word, as part of a plot to get her money by a man who married her, blah blah. It's very contrived, and this was something that was happening a lot in the Victorian era. A lot of men could basically declare their wives whatever as insane and then put them in an insane asylum and take their money. It's very classic Victorian sort of, you know, these people are bad, these people are good. It's got xenophobia, it's got fat phobia, it's, as I said, it's very sexist. It reduces these female characters to capable but lesbian and incapable but super hot and pure. It's just trash. It's just trash. We don't need this, okay? If you want to read something along the lines of this, I would recommend Fingersmith, which I think is basically a much cleverer take on this novel, although also slightly contrived and way too long in my personal opinion, but 100 times better than Wilkie Collins. So the next book, and I think the only book I have on here by a female author, is Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. So if you don't know what this book is about, it has a sort of multiple characters plot line. So we follow a rich middle-class family, we follow a artistic working class family, and then we also follow this poor Chinese woman who gives her child up for adoption but then regrets it after the child has been given to these very wealthy white parents. So the core ideas in this book in terms of like identity, the sort of the different perspectives that people have on social issues, that kind of stuff, I thought was interesting. But overall, I just thought this was such a cool concept for a book, and it was so boring. And I've seen other people criticize it for the overemphasis on the white middle class family. I don't know, I just felt like it felt like one of those books where there's a good concept but the author doesn't really go in on it. I don't know, I just wish that she had dug deeper. She hadn't spent so much time on Elena Richardson, her perspective. Like I felt like it could have just been done in a couple of chapters rather than like half the book we hear about her kind of paranoid Karen tendencies. And yeah, I just don't, basically, I don't think this is a terrible book. I just don't think that it is as good as the hype around it. I liked Everything I Never Told You a lot better, but in general, I just wish that Celeste Ng would go a bit harder. I love reading about sort of domestic tragedy and stuff like that because it happens all the time. And I also like that she talks about issues that maybe people don't typically talk about, like for example the main sort of plot here about who gets to determine what's right for a child. Is it better for a child to live in a stable household with money, with wealth, you know, with a two-parent household, that kind of stuff, or is it better for a child to be with their biological parent who can offer them insight into what it means to be Chinese? I don't really know what I'm talking about. Basically what I'm saying is that I really think that the plot around the adoption was really interesting, but there was just like a lot going on, and Elena's children feature a lot more in this book than really needs to. I don't really care about. I don't know. I just think that they were very boring characters, and it kind of just brought down my estimation of this book having so much of a focus on that. So the next book that I want to talk about is The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. This is probably one of the most popular fantasy books from the last 10 years. So this was published in 2007. So the last 15 years. I picked it up because lots of people that I rate their opinions were talking about this book. Sam read it and he was like, you know, give it a try, you might like it. I listened to the audiobook, which I would definitely recommend. It was a good audiobook, the narrator did a good job. And I read this book and I was like, what is the thing? What is it that people like about this book? I don't personally mind that Quoth or Quoth or Quothe or whatever his name is, that he is an unlikable character. I really could not care less. So the plot of this book is Quoth, somebody seeks him out and he's like, hey, tell me your story. So he tells his story in 3 days. So the first book is the first day that he's telling the story. There's a second one out. The third one will never see the light of day. Anyway, so he tells the story of basically his childhood, his adolescence, and entering this school for magic type shit. Don't know, I don't remember. And so I'm really losing it because it's so boring. What I really disliked about this book was the fact that all of the focus is on this one character. Like, he is so self-centered that we almost learn nothing about the other people around him. And if you're gonna do a magical school setting, you know, make me care about his friends. But I could not tell you about a single other character in this book apart from his love interest, who is the most boring bitch in the history of literature. Like, it's like he read The Woman in White and he was like, how can I make her one-dimensional, and then he produced Dina or Dana or whatever the hell her name is. I don't even remember the plot of this. All I remember is I finished it and I was like, what was the hype? It's so boring. This is not what I want in my fantasy. When I read fantasy, I want a interesting world, and I want cool characters, and I want elements from reality such as politics, history, that kind of stuff, you know, turned up a million. And this was just, it just read very much like a white man's fever fantasy dream. Both just read like, you know, a self-insert. This dude who is good at everything he does, who doesn't care about any other people, except for, like, there are a couple of women who he has, like, a special place in his heart for. Like, there's this, like, woman who, like, I think she lives in, like, underground tunnels or something, and she just shows up and she's like, oh, aren't the stars pretty? Don't read it, it's so boring. Next two books that I'm going to talk about are well-beloved classics, modern classics, that I thought I was also going to love, but I really resented the hell out of. It seems to me that if I don't like a book, I delete it from my mind's history because I don't remember much about any of these books. Bear with me. So the first one that I want to talk about is Stoner by John Williams. So this is a book about Stoner, who is not a stoner. He is a university lecturer, and essentially his character trait is that things happen to him and he just lets them happen and kind of feels sad about it. People who like this book talk about how it's a good book, or they like it because it shows kind of realistically how things will happen in life that can crush us, and there's not much that we can do about it. And fair enough, I would love to read that. He'll have things happen to him, and he has the agency to change the course of his life, but he doesn't. He just lets it happen, and I don't think that that's a beautiful, tragic story. I'm bored by it. I feel like this book gives Stoner a lot of the benefit of the doubt. I feel like it makes him kind of this, like, tragic hero of his own story. He marries this woman who seems set upon being the biggest bitch ever to him, but we have no indication of why she's doing these things. We just know that she's cruel, she's mean, she's awful, to the point where she ruins her daughter's life just to, I don't know, score a point against him. And then there's another bit in this novel that really rubbed me up the wrong way, and it features two characters with disabilities. It reads like a men's activism type shit. Stoner says some things to these characters. They take it the wrong way, according to the story. They basically gang up on him and ruin his career because they were just so offended by what he had done to them. And in this novel, it's made pretty clear that, well, Stoner wasn't doing anything wrong, and he is in the right here, but these overly sensitive, disabled characters who clearly have a chip on their shoulders just wanted to ruin his life. And then he dies, and I died a little bit as well. I don't know. That's that. The next book is East of Eden by John Steinbeck. Now, everybody loves Steinbeck. I don't know why. I really don't know why. So this book is almost 700 pages, and I wasted whatever time I had on earth on reading this book to the end, because I was like, it is so well beloved that there must be something in it that's just gonna, like, change my perspective, and I'm gonna, you know, put the book down, look out the window and be like, holy shit. But no, it basically, John Steinbeck takes the book of Genesis, you know, Adam and Eve, Abel and Cain, that kind of stuff, and reduces it, makes it even more one-dimensional or less dimensional. And he gives us the story of what the fuck happens in this book. It's the story, what does happen in this book? Okay, so we follow a bunch of male characters, and they range from really, really good guy to quite douchey guy. But we get a sort of sense that they are trying, they're struggling, you know, they're trying to make it in the world, they have good intentions, or, you know, they are bad people because X, Y, and Z happened to them in their childhood and now they're just kind of reacting against that in their older age. Okay, fine. But what really riled me up about this book is that there is a female character in here. And now, before you go, oh, Arena just doesn't like any sort of bad female characters. Bullshit. I'm a bad female character. I love that crap. What fucking irks my girdle in this book is that Kathy, or whatever the hell her name is, she is the epitome of evil in this world, and she seems to have been born evil. She's terrible to her parents, to her children, to her husband, to everybody. She's a skank. She owns a brothel in here, okay? We don't get any sense of explanation of why Kathy is as... We don't get to know why she's a bad character. We don't know why she's, you know, veering towards evil. She is literally the epitome of evil in this world, where the male characters range, as I said, there's so much range in the male characters. She is the only female character in this story that focuses, like, this is a family saga. We hear about different, you know, 4 or 5 different generations of like 3 families in this book. She is the only female character that really features, and all we know about her is that she is the worst. I really question how people pick these books up where the characters are so one-dimensional. And I've looked through reviews and I still don't get it. The writing to me is alright. I didn't hate it. I just don't get it. The only thing that I can surmise about this book is that when it came out, it was probably one of the few books that openly talked about topics such as sexuality and murder and that kind of stuff in a sort of, you know, this shit happens, we shouldn't shy away from it, and it happens to good people and bad people alike. Sure, fine, whatever. But like I said, I really resent reading male authors who do not think to give their female characters any sort of dimension, and then the whole world is like, wow, amazing. As a woman, I've spent too much of my life hating on women because male authors, male creatives, whatever, have told me that they're evil. I will not have it, and I will not sign my name to trashy classics, fantasy, whatever the fuck, that shit on female characters. So anyway, guys, I did this video. I will post this video, and some of you will watch this video, and some of you will probably downvote it and hate me because I don't like your favorite book, and I look forward to it. I am the evil female character in your life, and I welcome it. I welcome it. Happy Monday, or whatever, and bye.